Thank you so much, Alex. I'm Thunderwalker with the Thunderwalkerexperience. We have here today Alex Diamond, and he is a professor here in Oklahoma. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and my biggest question, a little bit about the history of cannabis throughout the world.
Thank you, Thunder. So I research drug policy, and I'm beginning to look into the marijuana industry in Oklahoma.
Wow.
But I guess one thing that's interesting that we've been talking about is like how even marijuana production, I mean, we've been talking about how Oklahoma became this huge marijuana producer. But the history of marijuana production in the U.S. is interesting because for decades, we imported marijuana from Mexico and Colombia, and I actually began studying drug policy in Colombia, so this is a particular interest to me.
Wow.
In the context of the war on drugs, particularly in the 80s, Reagan, who said he hated marijuana, his daughter grew marijuana, by the way, Patty Davis, and smoked a joint on the night that Reagan was elected because she was concerned about the future of the country. But while his daughter was maybe slightly more enlightened, Reagan himself was dumping all kinds of poison on marijuana crops in Mexico, the crops that were being shipped up to the U.S., and stopping shipments at the border. So in this context, in Humboldt County, California, you have a bunch of hippies coming up and settling and creating communes and living together and growing their own marijuana. Right, they're not real capitalists. They're not thinking about expanding into national markets. But as the supply from particularly Mexico is controlled, you have this huge national vacuum where a lot of people are smoking or want to, but they start losing access to Mexican marijuana. And this is when Humboldt County starts producing for the whole country. And then Reagan comes after Humboldt County. They send all these helicopters in, they start destroying those crops. That drives the price up even higher, and that really increases economic incentives, and that's when it really becomes a big business. And you have not just hippies, but people who are more concerned with making money, who start to grow for a national market. And since then, California has provided most of the country's, if not most of the world's marijuana. Until recently, when Oklahoma is now in a position maybe to supplant California production.
Wow. See, those are the type of conversations that I want us to have, not only understanding the history, but also understanding how we're moving forward and how to make things better. Thinking of Oklahoma and thinking of a lot of people that came from California and Colorado to come here and live and create businesses here and supplying us with really, really, really good cannabis. Whether it's medicinal or whether it's recreational, this stuff is great. I mean, they are concerned and they have perfected their craft. Where do we go from here? How can we understand the past that will help us understand the future? Because when I think of someone going in and burning crops, I'm thinking that we're losing a lot of the genetics and all of those things. We're losing the techniques of the best way of doing business. So how can we learn from our past, in your opinion, to help our future right now in Oklahoma?
Well, I think one major lesson is cannabis market's not going away, right? And the war on drugs, I mean, this is almost obvious to say, but the war on drugs has been a failure. The war on drugs ends up being a war on people. It ends up destroying people's livelihoods. And in sociology, we talk about something that's called a balloon effect, where if you take a balloon and you squeeze one side of it, the other side kind of pops out. That's been the history of U.S. drug policy. You shut down shipping routes of cocaine through the Caribbean, and those shipping routes will change and they'll go through Central America and Mexico. And that's the history, a large part of the history of how those countries have become plagued by violence. You shut down marijuana production in Mexico, it moves to California. Now what we're seeing is that different state legalization regimes, like different ways that states have decided to legalize and regulate cannabis industry, cannabis cultivation, create different sets of incentives. I mean, we were talking about like the cost of licensing fees in Oklahoma. Oklahoma also has cheap electricity, right? So states like California, in legalizing, have really expensive licenses that have cut a lot of legacy growers out. Some of the testing that they require has been really expensive and difficult for people to live up to. I mean, and testing, we've been talking about testing. Testing is a good thing, but we need to look at how they're affecting like growers and who's able to have access to the cannabis market. So I think what we see is that different state responses, which may be different levels of punitiveness, right? It may be burning crops, but it may also just be saying you need $60,000 to sell to get a license to sell your cannabis to a dispensary in California, right? Which I think is the cost. Those kind of things push people out, but then those people in those economies end up popping up elsewhere, right?
Absolutely, like in Oklahoma or New Mexico, because those two states are pretty much a way that just the Main Street America is able to actually participate. Wow, I am so grateful that you came through. We met at CannaCon. Alex came and heard me speak on building community in the dispensaries. And that's how it actually grows, when you're just having a simple conversation and then you go back and you decide, okay, I want to make things better, but I want to find someone that has resources or knowledge that we can collaborate to do better things. So in the future, I think you're going to hear a lot from Mr. Alex Diamond and his project, and I'm just so grateful to sit down with him and have a conversation, not only about Oklahoma, but the entire world, the history, and also how it affects the entry level for people that may not be able to afford to be in the room if we do not keep the voices talking about why entry is so important. So,
well, I appreciate you, and what you just recorded is me talking about things that I've learned about and read about, but you've been educating me for the last 2 hours, I think, and I think I really appreciate what you've taught me about the industry here in Oklahoma and around the country, and I really appreciate the advocacy work that you're doing on behalf of industry participants, on behalf of people for whom cannabis is really a boon to their health, whether physical health, psychological health, dealing with a whole bunch of issues, and really thinking about ways to make the cannabis industry as socially just as possible. So I just really, thank you for sharing with me, and thank you for everything that you do.
all right, cool. Thank you.